Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7, live from Glasgow. I am Scott Bevan. I am joined today by Chris McCusker, regular contributor. Hello, Chris.
Good evening, Scott.
Chris will be joining us to talk about the news as we progress through the show. First then, the coronavirus update. As of 2 p.m. today, a total of 2,250,458 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and UK Government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 1,969,236 have been confirmed negative. 281,222 have tested positive. There are 3,887 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms and not all those with symptoms will be tested. There are 3 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus COVID-19 infection now stands at 7,716. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 237 were in hospital last night, 19 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. this morning, 3,799,467 people had received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 2,712,237 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show 128,140 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 14 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just hospitals. The NRS update then, as of the 27th of June, 10,168 deaths have been registered in Scotland, where the novel coronavirus COVID-19 was mentioned on the death certificate, according to statistics published by the National Records of Scotland today. In the week from the 21st of June to the 27th of June, 17 deaths were registered that mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate, an increase of 4 deaths from the previous week. 2 deaths were aged under 65. 5 were aged 65 to 74, and there were 10 deaths in people aged 75 or over. 4 were female and 13 were male. 14 deaths were in hospitals, 3 deaths were at home or in non-institutional settings. No care home deaths were registered in the week of the 25th. The number of deaths from all causes registered in Scotland in this week was 1,043,024, or 2% more rather than the 5-year average. We have received a press release today. Sorry, it's 1,043. And we have received a press release today from the Scottish Government that said that the JCVI advice on COVID-19 booster vaccinations has been released, responding to the publication of interim advice on adult COVID-19 booster vaccinations by the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation. Health Secretary Humza Yousaf said the Scottish Government welcomes the interim advice from the JCVI that in order to maximise protection in those most vulnerable to serious COVID-19 booster vaccinations should be offered to certain priority groups from September. To our first story then of this evening. EU settled status deadline has been branded another Windrush scandal waiting to happen. The SNP has said the UK government's EU settlement scheme deadline is another Tory Windrush scandal waiting to happen. Speaking at Prime Minister's Questions, Ian Blackford urged Boris Johnson to scrap the deadline and introduce automatically granted settled status, as he promised during the EU referendum. The SNP Westminster leader said hundreds of thousands of EU nationals have been left in limbo, and warned that the Prime Minister's legacy would be the ridiculous removal of our NHS staff, our local community workers, our teachers and many more who have made their homes here, if the UK government proceeds with their hard deadline. During the 2016 EU referendum, Boris Johnson made a commitment that EU citizens will automatically be granted indefinite leave to remain in the UK. In the July of 2019, he promised EU nationals living in the UK will have absolute certainty for the right to live and remain. SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford MP said, Scotland's message to EU citizens is you're welcome here. We want you to stay. This is your home. He called on the UK government to do the right thing and scrap the deadline and introduce automatically granted settled status. So, Chris, that's a good point, isn't it, by the SNP that this was the promise at the start of campaigning for the EU referendum, and for a year or two since, right up until 2019, all the fears that people had about this kind of thing happening, Boris Johnson and Brexiters were saying, no, it's not going to happen, they're going to have guaranteed settled status. They've now completely U-turned on that, haven't they?
Well, they haven't U-turned on it in any such way, shape or form. It's just another promise that was broken. It just reaffirms the fact that the Tories cannot be trusted in any such way, shape or form. Very much like the 350 million that was promised, which was emblazoned on the side of a bus for the NHS. That will never happen. Unfettered access to Northern Ireland. We see that that's still not the case. Hashtag Sausagegate. The one thing that stands out for me from a humanitarian issue is the fact that there is nearly 24,000 children included in that figure of 102,000 who are in the backlog. And that's why Ian Blackford has urged the Prime Minister just to, cut out the red tape and just grant everyone who is living here, who is on the voter register, to, get British citizenship. If that's, I hate to degrade myself and actually say British citizenship, because the SNP are absolutely right, and we've been consistent since long before 2014, is the fact that EU migrants are welcome here, and Scotland needs inward migration in order to sustain, our cultural sites, our tourism, our hostelries, and leisure facilities. And not just that as well. There is a pool of talent that Scotland needs, because the birthing rate in Scotland has been slowly declining as well. So, it makes sense in order to, nationalise these people and give them the rights afforded to, everyone else in the land. Simple as that.
Windrush deportations were, of course, a complete scandal for this government under Theresa May, when Theresa May was the Home Secretary. But of course, it didn't bring down the UK government in any way. In fact, their votes and the increased share of those votes has gone up since then. Do you think that that's factoring into this? Do you think that, this is what the British public want, or that they can get away with it?
Yes, I do, actually. And it's because the narrative of this right-wing cabal that is running the UK, unfortunately, they are playing into the nasty, pernicious narrative of the far right within England, unfortunately, which is, I would hastily add, are in the minority. But you've seen it only at the recent football event, that there were some vile tweets on social media regarding a young German girl who was obviously upset at the result of her team. And, I wouldn't even want to repeat what those tweets were. They have been taken away, but back in the 70s, I remember the rise of the neo-fascist far right, and back then it was braces and Doc Marten boots and skinheads and their attitude to anybody that even had a suntan, let alone a different colour skin. This is what the ideology of the Conservatives, particularly Boris Johnson, latterly with Theresa May, and it horribly manifests itself within Priti Patel. It's just absolutely appalling that anybody could hold such. It's just a horrible thing to demonize someone, just because of their background and their ethnicity. It's shocking.
Yeah, the event which you mentioned last night about the little girl crying into who I presume was her dad's arms yesterday. We saw that yesterday, and myself and my partner both commented, "Why are they even showing that, on television?" That was a bit surprising, but there you go. The inevitable tweets that came out of that were tragic. Moving on then, the EU has agreed to delay Brexit meat checks in Northern Ireland. The European Commission has granted the UK a 3-month extension on the sale of sausages in Northern Ireland, an attempt to defuse a row which has poisoned post-Brexit relations. In a widely trailed discussion, Brussels said fresh sausages and other chilled meats could continue to move between Great Britain and Northern Ireland until the 30th of September, giving the two sides more time to resolve a fierce dispute over the Northern Ireland Protocol, a centrepiece of the Brexit deal. While the row centres on chilled sausages and minced meat, it has exposed a fundamental clash over the EU's fears about protecting its single market and the UK government's wish for undiluted sovereignty against a backdrop of heightened tensions and street violence in Northern Ireland. Announcing the decision, the European Commission Vice President Maros Sefcovic said, "Our work is about ensuring that the hard-earned gains of the Good Friday Belfast Agreement, peace and stability in Northern Ireland, are protected, while avoiding a hard border on the island of Ireland and maintaining the integrity of the EU single market." To secure his oven-ready Brexit deal, Boris Johnson agreed Northern Ireland would remain in the EU customs union and single market, an outcome that his predecessor Theresa May said no British Prime Minister could accept. The request was granted after the UK agreed not to change domestic law on meat products for the next 3 months. To assuage EU concerns about British meat illegally entering the EU, products will be labelled UK only and sold exclusively in Northern Irish supermarkets. So do you think that the EU then is perhaps realising the damage that is going to be caused to ordinary people and perhaps letting up a little bit because their previous negotiations were quite understandably hard line towards the Tory government? Do you think that they're realising that they might have to be a little more lenient?
Well, no, I think actually the EU are being pragmatic and possibly, dare I say, magnanimous in granting the UK government a concession because make no mistake about it, this was in the fine detail that the Conservative government failed to actually read, and take cognizance of that this could be a hurdle, and they failed to do the proper due diligence in the first place, in order to avoid, any such issue arising, and it's maybe a small factor in the fallout of Brexit, but in the grand scheme of things, we are going to see this on other food commodities as we go forward. So, I've got no pity for the UK government, obviously. I have got some pity for the people in Northern Ireland that are having to go through this because, again, like Scotland, they didn't vote for Brexit either. And this has been foisted upon them. This is a small indication of decentralisation that the Tories wish to enable. Within Britain, they want to control everything through Westminster and through Whitehall, and this will impact not the actual sausage gate, but this will impact. This will have ramifications for Scotland going forward, because if this is what the Tories are prepared to do now, just think of what they're prepared to do in 5 years' time.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be reporting on the fallout in Northern Ireland of Brexit for quite some time. Almost 2,000 Scots have attended Euro 2020 events with COVID. Public Health Scotland have said that almost 2,000 people who live in Scotland attended Euro 2020 events while infectious with COVID-19. Thousands of Scots came to London for the England group stage match on June the 18th. Those with tickets went to Wembley Stadium to see the game, while others gathered in the city centre. Of the 1,991 people identified as having attended a Euro 2020 event while infectious, 1,294 had travelled to London and 397 had gone to Wembley. Public Health Scotland has said cases were labelled if the person in question has seen a match at Hampden or Wembley, gone to a fan zone in Glasgow, or participated in an informal gathering at a pub or a house to watch a match. The Tartan Army also made its presence felt at Hampden Stadium in Glasgow for the matches against the Czech Republic and Croatia. There were only 38 reports of people attending Scotland's home game against Croatia while contagious, with 37 reports from Scotland's match against the Czech Republic at Hampden. So, given that a lot of people have been attending these events while infectious, and we are possibly entering what might be considered a third wave, do you think that it's been right to hold the Euros here in the way that we did?
I could catch myself out here, Scott, because I did actually attend the fan zone in Glasgow. I have personally, and I know it doesn't offer 100% immunity, but I've got the two jabs. Both my sons, who I attended with, they both took lateral flow tests. My eldest son has got his second jab also. He's in the vulnerable category. We took every precaution possible, and thankfully I don't feel the effects of it. But sadly, there are some people out there who, think because events such as this are now opening up, that they can, take advantage of it and, have a carte blanche attitude towards, hugging people openly and, and touching various things along the way. So it's again the whole reason behind the opening up of these events is obviously corporate capitalism, which is at the heart of the Tory mantra. So I have mixed givings about people who attended, because obviously, as I say, I was one of them. But if you were to say to me, "Here, Chris, there's a ticket, away down to London and enjoy yourself," I would say, "No, thanks very much. I'll rather stay here."
Yeah. Do you see thousands of people attending football matches, outdoor concerts, theatres, etc., after the summer, when hopefully the vaccine rollout will be nearly complete?
Well, it will happen. Most viewers know I'm an avid supporter of both Celtic and Liverpool, and I see that season tickets are actually, back to sort of like pre-pandemic levels. 45,000 people so far have taken up their season tickets for Parkhead. And roughly about the same amount is taken up for Anfield as well. I would hope that we would get to a space where outdoor events are more manageable. However, indoor events, I mean, obviously I was looking forward to the SNP conference and sadly I've found out that it's going to be online yet again. So, from that point of view, things aren't getting back to normal. And we need to realise this, that, we have to play the long game with COVID in order that we can sort of like get back to normal. At some point in time, we're going to have to learn to live with COVID. And that's to me, the bottom line. So I don't think that we can, drop the face mask wearing tomorrow, the sanitising of hands and stuff like that, in a week or a fortnight or even a month's time. I think we all have to be vigilant, for these events to take place going forward. But by the same token, we still have to be mindful of the gravity of the situation.
Yeah. Just very quickly then, what impact does holding remote conferences have on these conferences? Does it diminish the participation in it in any way, or does it increase it?
Well, for me, being a rabid socialist, I look forward to contesting resolutions. There is no platform to allow a motion to be remitted back and debated further and stuff like that. I love debate, but so I think that it can appear to some party members as being slightly sanitised. I mean, the SNP have got a wonderful champion, a chap called Jerry Fisher, who he just loves to argue when he's on stage and put his point across, and he does it with such veracity that everybody is hooked up and stuff like that. So, and I'm sure that's very similar to the conferences of the Greens and stuff like that. Sadly, I don't think it's you could say the same for other parties.
Moving on to a slightly related matter then, demand has been made for a U-turn on furlough cuts as COVID third wave hits. From tomorrow, the UK government will go forward with plans to start cutting COVID financial support to businesses across the United Kingdom, despite being in the midst of the pandemic. In contrast, the Scottish Government has introduced 100% business rate relief for the full 2021 to 2022 financial year. However, the powers surrounding furlough support remain reserved to Westminster. Speaking at Prime Minister's questions today, SNP MP Dr Philippa Whitford urged the Prime Minister to make a U-turn on the decision, suggesting that a third wave could be on the horizon. Dr Whitford said that Boris Johnson's delay in adding India to the red list allowed the Delta variant to threaten a third wave. She said that it is critical not to withdraw business support at a time which could lead to thousands of unnecessary redundancies across the United Kingdom. We had Philippa Whitford on last week, and she was saying that it's not just the industries that you would expect to be affected by this, the food industries, the NHS, etc. It's also because of Brexit, you're also having people unable to go on tours, for instance. So people who are musicians can't go on tours across Europe. People are unable to just live in the way that they were, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of Brexit. Do you think that the Conservative government needs to take this into account and realise that, there's going to be a big impact, not just because of this pandemic, but also because of the Brexit process, which is going to be hard to transition away into.
Well, with regard live performers, we've seen this week that Lord Andrew Lloyd Webber has been very vocal and standing up for performers' rights and stuff like that, and all the rest of it, which I find rather bizarre, seeing as how he was the one that jumped on the plane from America back over to Britain in order to vote to take money away from the most vulnerable in our society. So and all of a sudden now he, because his sector is being directly impacted, is now sort of like asking questions of the UK government. So I mean, it's going to be devastating for EU musicians to come over to Scotland. Particularly we enjoyed the influx of musicians and performers at the Edinburgh Fringe. So obviously that's going to have an impact on that. And I'm even thinking about the likes of sports going forward, stuff like that. Footballers' contracts. I know that there have been some sort of like buys, shall we say, of people allowed to do this, that, and the next thing. But in the grand scheme of things, earlier on today, David Linden was asking the UK government to give concessions for HGV haulier drivers because we have a shortage. And the answer from Boris Johnson sounded to me like that he doesn't want to give jobs away to anybody before British people. So
Yeah.
I mean, what is he going to do? How can you put somebody who has got no knowledge, far less possibly doesn't have an HGV license, behind the wheel of a truck in order to deliver groceries to Ardnamurchan or Lossiemouth or even Devon or Cornwall? It's absolutely bizarre. So going back to the original point is that again, the UK government need to wake up and they need to devolve the powers necessary to Scotland in order for us to manage our own migration. Yeah. That's the easiest way that I can see that could sort it out.
We will touch on the HGV drivers in a moment, but do you think then that there is likely to be another lockdown? We thought this time last year that we were coming towards the start of the end of the pandemic, and of course people are wanting to think the same this year, but in the Edinburgh Fringe, as you mentioned, there is going ahead this year. Do you think that, come September, we'll be in the same situation that we were in last year?
Probably not September, but speaking from a sector that I used to work in, I was a trade union rep at Glasgow Airport, and they're not being supported, going forward. One of the many sectors, that are just being, that are forcing to view a complete cliff edge once the furlough scheme ends, and with no clear direction in sight of foreign travel, getting back to anything near normality, then we have to take into consideration how we could manage that to avoid a third lockdown. Because if I was a gambling man, which thankfully I'm not, I would possibly put my house on the fact that there could well be a third wave in some shape or form. If we keep following the Four Nation advice. I was very vocal at the start of the pandemic for the the SNP, Nicola in particular, not to follow the Four Nation approach. Again, Scotland not being in charge of its procurement services and all the rest of it, we had no option. We had no option. We had to go with it. And needless to say, yes, the vaccine rollout all across Britain has been very good. But by the same token, we could have made better choices that we weren't allowed to make. And that could possibly have an impact on any possible third wave. And I'm thinking again about the aviation sector, because we are not in control of our borders, and so we have no say whatsoever in what comes in from Europe and wider afield, and what actually goes out towards Europe and wider afield as well. So from that point of view, I really don't want to see it, and nobody in Scotland does want to see it, because we were all. How can I say this? We were all. We had Christmas taken away from us by the UK government, because of their failure, their lack of clarity and leadership, towards managing the borders. And if they don't do it, then it's a high possibility that a third wave could happen again.
Yeah, and of course the mental health crisis is something that we will also need to focus on post-pandemic. To trade news now then, Scottish shellfish sales have severely plummeted. New figures published today reveal sales of Scottish shellfish plunged by nearly a quarter between 2019 and 2020 off the back of Brexit. The Scottish Shellfish Farm Production Survey 2020 revealed a 15% drop in farmed mussels, while production of oyster shells fell by a third. This resulted in an overall 23% fall in the value of Scottish shellfish industry to 6.1 million. MSP for Argyll and Bute's Jenny Minto said that Scotland's shellfish industry and the entire seafood sector has had an incredibly tough couple of years, as they have suffered the double whammy of the pandemic and the Tories' disastrous hard Brexit. Ms Minto said that these figures may only be the tip of the iceberg, as they do not consider the full impact of the Brexit deal, with producers reporting shellfish rotting and unsellable before it reaches its European markets. So Chris, so much for protecting our fish then, eh?
Correct. I would possibly defy Jacob Rees-Mogg that they are happy British fish, because at this moment in time, again, it's another sector that I can speak upon. I'm a qualified chef, my good friend Ruth Watson has been clamouring on about this, pardon the pun, for what seems like an eternity. The need to buy Scottish produce and use Scottish produce, because unfortunately the export of Scottish produce to the French market for restaurants and hotels, stuff like that, is, I hate to use the word, but the arse is just falling out of the whole game altogether because of Brexit. It was only a couple of months ago that we were bottom arse. Call it as you like, but we had lorries sitting at the ports down in England, and the commodities within those trucks were rotten due to the border checks that they said were never going to happen. Again, another broken promise. The oodles of red tape that have just been, lumbered on our transport industry, or hauliers and stuff like that, has been absolutely catastrophic. And anybody in the catering trade knows that, the likes of a scallop or a langoustine and stuff like that, it is just-in-time delivery. You want it as fresh on your plate as the very minute it's caught. The French, being obviously connoisseurs of good food and good wine, they will not put up with a drop in standard, and that is an exacting standard that we have had. The old alliance of Scotland trading with France, back into the 1700s, we used to get oysters and stuff like that from them, and claret and stuff like that, and they would take our produce as well, and it was, as I said earlier, unfettered. And now we are finding that this just-in-time delivery chain has been totally fettered. It's been totally, been turned upside down, all because of the Tory will of inflicting the greatest act of self-harm, upon a nation's export capacity.
Yes, on that delivery issue, then moving on to the Prime Minister being urged to tackle the HGV driver shortage. Speaking at Prime Minister's Questions today, the SNP Work and Pension spokesperson David Linden MP urged Boris Johnson to intervene in the situation and add HGV drivers to the UK shortage occupation list, or risk the sector facing devastating consequences. Mr Linden's intervention comes following a haulage company in Glasgow East End constituency contacting him to raise the difficulties it has had in accessing labour. Prior to the pandemic, UK road transport business employed approximately 600,000 HGV drivers, 60,000 of whom were EU nationals. This number has since deteriorated drastically due to restricted travel and the uncertainty surrounding Brexit. So we touched on this a couple of times then this evening, the HGV drivers shortage. It's going to have a big impact, isn't it, if we don't do something about it, if the UK government doesn't do something about it. What does the summer have in store for our foods produce?
Well, as Nicola has often said, I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, Scott. But I do know. David Linden, I have to say, has been absolutely fantastic. Of championing the issues within the constituency in the East End, from the horrible situation going on at the Pladis-owned McVitie's factory, which has been there for nigh on 100 years, to this issue, which is very, very pertinent, and it is showing up the fact that one distribution company is being hampered in its operation because of the impacts of not just COVID but also Brexit. Again, I hate to use the word wonderfully highlights, but it does highlight again, going back to what I was talking about, is the fact that the people best placed to make judgments on inward migration to one nation is the people who are here, which is the Scottish people, again, obviously it highlights the fact that Boris Johnson does not think about anything that happens outside the M25 orbital, and that is just it. That is the long and short of it.
Yeah, there's been talk that big business leaders will be allowed to sort of come out of quarantine if they're helping the UK economy, but clearly the HGV drivers, etc., they're helping the economy more than anyone.
Correct. Yeah, and I couldn't agree any more than that. And once these issues are brought to the fore, as I say, we will see again the fallout in the aftermath of it.
Yeah, absolutely. On to Grenfell then. An inquiry has told that Grenfell smoke ventilation was woefully inadequate. The smoke ventilation system at Grenfell Tower was woefully inadequate, breached building regulations, and is likely to have contributed to deaths, the inquiry into the disaster has heard. The network of ducts and vents was supposed to keep the building's common parts clear for escape, but it failed, allowing thick smoke to spread through hallways, making evacuation harder, claimed lawyers for the bereaved, survivors and residents. Stephanie Barwise QC, representing one of the survivor groups, told the start of the latest phase of the inquiry that the smoke control system installed as part of the refurbishment, completed a year before the fire, actively posed a significant hazard to life safety, which should not be underestimated. Dr. Barbara Lane, a leading fire engineer, provided expert evidence to the inquiry, has concluded it breached building regulations and British standards of performance criteria. It shifts the inquiry's focus after it earlier concluded the main cause of external fire spread was the plastic-filled cladding panels used to wrap the 24-storey building in West London. Dense smoke filled the hallways, making it impossible for many people on the upper floors to escape. And the coroner investigating the 72 deaths, Dr. Fiona Wilcox, has said most of the victims succumbed to smoke inhalation. Barwise said that after a catastrophic failure of the ventilation system in a non-fatal 2010 fire at Grenfell, experts repeatedly warned that the Kensington and Chelsea Tenant Management Organisation that the system was not working properly and breached fire regulations. In 2014, the London Fire Brigade also issued a deficiency notice because a quarter of the smoke vents did not work. It failed to account for the possibility that multiple flat doors might be opened as occupants escaped, or that firefighters might prop open stair or lobby doors with fire hoses, all of which happened on the night of the fire, when some dampers did not close properly and others leaked. So up until now, of course, all the focus has been on the cladding, but it appears as though the majority of deaths may actually have occurred thanks to smoke inhalation and the venting system, which failed as well.
Yeah, and again, it just highlights an awful situation that when can I say largely uninvestigated by the UK government procurement scheme, which allowed a building such as the Grenfell Tower to be constructed in the first place without the due diligence done in the actual construction of it. So it's again, it's I hate to say, but it's it's a manifestation of corporate capitalism, which has actually resulted in manslaughter, culpable manslaughter. Which in this day and age, you would think that at least the provision of life would be the first and foremost in any government's ideals towards construction or housing. The provision of being able to house your family in a safe and secure place. So, yes, there are companies that need to be held to account to this, but at the end of the day, it's the UK government again, which has got, a complete lack of empathy towards the, citizens that have had to, go through this absolute nightmare. And,
Yeah.
Again, they can't rectify this, quickly enough. And, again, they cannot apologise enough for it, because the amount of people that have suffered through, this has been absolutely shocking. And as I say, I emphasise the fact that at the heart of this is corporate capitalism.
Yeah. In your opinion then, Chris, does Boris Johnson have a lot to answer for, given his actions as Mayor of London?
Well, yes, and I'm glad that you pointed out the fact that he was Mayor of London at this time. So the planning applications would have to go through I would imagine his office at some point in time, or you would have to have some sort of oversight at least. But at the end of the day, the one that's in charge. If this happened under the watch of Sadiq Khan, people would be calling for the head of the current mayor at this moment in time. So if a mayor's role is to oversee the various councils within that actual area, then then obviously there has to be some
Yeah.
sort of fallback.
Kensington Borough Council is Kensington Chelsea Borough Council rather is of course the ones who are in charge of overseeing that. So does that in any way absolve the mayorship at that time?
Well, no. Again, what is a mayor? Is a mayor not at the top of the tree when when it comes to this? I mean, years ago I used to live in the Royal Borough of Elmbridge. There were no high-rise buildings within Elmbridge, but by the same token, if something happened in Elmbridge, yes, of course, it would be the Elmbridge Borough Council that would, be in charge of that. But at the end of the day, they are controlled by the UK government.
Mm.
So, I think that the buck has to stop somewhere, and accountability has to go down the line.
Yeah. Well, moving on to international news now, then. The UN court has convicted former Milosevic aides of war crimes. UN judges have convicted 2 men of war crimes for their role in financing and equipping Serb militias during the breakup of former Yugoslavia in the final case before the court, dating from the Balkan Wars of the 1990s. In a summary of the judgment provided by the court convicted the former head of Serbia's State Security Service, Jovica Stanisic, and his subordinate Frankie Simatovic, and handed them 12-year sentences. This has been a long time coming, hasn't it, for those involved in the conflicts in the 90s?
It's too long for even a resolution to be brought to the fore. And again, there are many hands at play. Who done Slobodan Milosevic's bidding, shall we say? And again, a near genocide of people. So I would want more to be coming out of this. I would want more international sort of like observers in order to see that justice is done, because at the end of the day, there are many people, within that regime who have got blood on their hands.
Yeah, why do you think it's taken so long for, all the court cases to finally sort of come to an end? I think this is the last one. Why do you think it's taken as long as this? Of course, it did take a very long time to convict many fascists after World War II as well. So do you think it's just something that does take an awful long time in order to gather enough evidence?
Well, yeah, there has to be what's the word? Due prudence done in order to make sure. I mean, years ago, before the inception of the CPS, the Criminal Prosecution Service, basically, and I'm just being matter of fact here, but a policeman would catch a wrongdoer, and they would take them into a police station and put them in front of the desk sergeant. And then the desk sergeant would decide whether you've got enough evidence in order to hold that person. So you need evidence. You need evidence in any sort of like criminal case. And we've seen. I don't actually know the length of time that it took for the Nuremberg trials. I know that it took an awful long time, but certain things have to be put in place. You have to set up obviously a court type room, and people have to be able to put their case across. There were many people in those trials and stuff like that. The British, the Americans, Canadians, Australians, all the rest of it. But people who were in the Allied forces and people who were against, whatnot, what have you. So yes, there is a complex thing to set up. But at the end of the day, when the final verdicts are arrived at, then hopefully people will see that justice has been served.
Thank you, Chris, for that. Young people have been urged to apply for a Job Start payment. Social Justice Secretary Shona Robinson has urged eligible young people to apply for a Job Start payment if they are starting a new job after a period of unemployment. Eligible 16 to 24-year-olds who have been on certain benefits for 6 months or more can apply for the one-off payment worth £252.50 or £404 if the applicant has children. The payment will help with the cost of starting a new job, including travel, new clothes or childcare. Ms Robinson visited Remploy's offices in Dundee to meet a hairdresser who recently used the payment to buy work clothes and travel. This is something that's good news and has been something that a lot of people have said we've needed actually for quite some time. Do you think there'll be a big uptake in it?
I would hope that there's going to be a big uptake in it, because if there is, then obviously we can see that the Scottish Government are investing in young people and in the job sector. So, I would hope, and I'm pretty safe when I say this, that, this scheme, could never be compared with the previous schemes that were rolled out by the Tories, such as the youth unemployment scheme and the young training scheme and all that kind of mince. This is a real positive leg up to people who are desperate to get into the methodology of actually working and giving something back into society and giving something back into the communities. So it's going to be beneficial for Scotland going forward.
Yeah, lots of people have been unemployed and struggling, of course, over the pandemic. Why is the focus then just on young people and not all people who have been unemployed and are struggling to get back into work?
Well, I mean, this is a standalone issue, conceived by the Scottish Government, specifically targeting young people to get onto the employment ladder. Again, this is taking into consideration the fact that the UK government, dare I say, using its broad shoulders, in the furlough scheme, in order to mitigate the worst effects of people not being able to work. Sadly, that is coming to an end anytime soon. And the proof will be in the pudding with that regards. But this is actually the Scottish Government directly investing in the workforce of tomorrow, and that has got to benefit Scotland going forward. From my point of view as a trade union rep, we need people to be ready in order to start work, and that does mean giving them a grant in order that they can afford the work clothes. Personally, I think that if any health and safety equipment is needed for the job, then it should be provided by the employer. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, working as a chef, I had to go out and buy my own knives. Nobody gave me the money, for my own knives. Nobody gave me money to buy my own clogs. So it is a great initiative, and it should be lauded.
Absolutely agreed. And finally then, social care personal assistants are to receive a £500 payment. A special online portal has been launched for more than 10,000 personal assistants across Scotland to ensure they receive a £500 thank you payment. The personal assistant workforce are employed directly by disabled people for whom they provide vital support to enable them to live independently. They are the last remaining group to receive the bonus payment for health and social care workers, which was announced in November of 2020. The portal launched today will provide the most effective, streamlined way to reach these workers. A paper-based application form is also available for those who prefer it. They will be administered by Scotland Excel on behalf of the Scottish Government. This is good news as well. Do you think that this is possibly the first stirrings of some sort of public social care sector, Chris?
Going forward, yes, I really hope that it is. As an unpaid carer myself, I benefit directly from the Scottish Government with their extra payments towards carers, and that again, notwithstanding the extra payments that have been made to unpaid carers during COVID as well. So, and this is not replicated in England in any such way, shape, or form. I would be happily to stand corrected if it is again replicated in Wales. I don't think it is, but I'm happy to be corrected. So again, it shows the kind of society that the Scottish Government wish to create in order to recompense people who do an amazing body of work. And I'm not just bumming my own self up here, as an unpaid carer, but carers, and I don't know so much about personal assistance and stuff like that, but from my own perspective, the UK government pay 86 pence an hour for people to actually care for people. So 86 pence an hour is just nowhere near enough, and any extra payments obviously just shows the wealth of gratitude and empathy that the Scottish Government have got towards these hard working people.
Yeah, I mean, it's dependent on the number of hours that people work in an average week. So do you think that people are going to feel as though, how do I prove that, and feel as though there's not going to be perhaps the uptake that they hope on this?
Well, no, I think the original premise of the actual offer of money, as far as I'm aware, will be exactly the same as people like me, unpaid carers, where I don't need to prove to the Scottish Government. I don't have to qualify because they already know that I care for my elder brother, and it's an automatic direct payment. So I would hope that it was done, in a very similar fashion.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us tonight, Chris. We have come to the end of our programme. We can only do what we do here at Broadcasting Scotland thanks to your generous contributions and help. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and I hope that you can, in some way, help us out to continue to make programmes that are not beholden to corporate interests or, of course, the UK Government. I've been Scott Bevan. Thank you for joining us, and good night.
How do you mean no more commission?
Well, no one in Scotland can commission an idea. If I went to BBC Scotland and I said, I've got this great idea for a sitcom, I've got this brilliant idea for a drama, no, there isn't one person in Scotland that can okay it unless it goes through London.
Good morning and welcome to another edition of Full Scottish. What's happening today?
Hello and welcome to the Full Scottish here on Broadcasting Scotland.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
That need, that desire for independence is ever stronger than perhaps it was in 2014. So there's an obligation that we've got to give leadership to that campaign. That's what Nicola Sturgeon, as our First Minister, has been doing.
My feeling about Boris Johnson is he can't be trusted on anything.
That is now and forever will be known as the rape clause.
I'm old enough to remember going into Europe in '73, and I remember how much of a razor's edge that was a battling stone. And I think we made it by 53%, if I remember correctly, for going in. And ever since that time, England particularly has been pretty much schizophrenic, down the middle about whether it felt British or whether it felt European. And that schism, that crack has remained throughout English society ever since.
Scotland means business. Scotland's voice won't be stilled, it won't be silenced, it has to be heard.
About the work that's been done by Broadcasting Scotland in giving community activists, yes activists, Scottish activists a platform other than the traditional media outlets.